you aren't being a proper woman, therefore you must be a witch. You must be a witch.
Hello to the Missing Witches Coven. I want you, it's your Auntie Amy. I want you to join me today in welcoming an amazing artist, Cedar Eve Peters. Thank you so much, Cedar. Can you tell our listeners a bit about who you are?
Sure. I am a artist. I kind of dabble in everything, but my main focus is beadwork and painting. So I do large scale murals sometimes. And for the beadwork, I mostly make earrings and chokers. It's more jewelry based. Trying to get into more like textile things as well. And then I work with youth during the school year when that's allowed. 'Cause right now, COVID and stuff.
In other years.
Yeah.
So we'll get into the specifics of your artistry, but I did promise Risa that I would mention she has a t-shirt with one of your images on it, and it's one of her favorites. So I promised her that I would send that love to you, that your artwork keeps her cozy. So let's break it down a bit. You mentioned jewelry and beadwork. So let's start there. I mean, I approached you because I was working on the Buffy St. Marie episode, and she said that her spirituality is creativity. And you refer to yourself as the color wizard, and we'll definitely get into like more color magic. But can you talk a little bit about how your jewelry has come to be?
Yeah, I'd like to say that the colored wizard is not a self-proclamation. My friends call me that, so I just thought it would be funny to call myself that as well. I really like the sound of it.
Me too.
Yeah, I've always been interested in art. I've been doing art since I was a young kid. I was mostly doing like painting and drawing when I was growing up. I went to an art high school in Toronto, so there I was focused mostly on photography, like working in the darkroom. And then I applied for Concordia, so I moved here for university, doing studio arts, where again I focused on mostly painting and drawing. But after I graduated, like I really wanted to try to make it as an artist and like be self-sufficient in that. And found it was pretty difficult to sell paintings and drawings consistently. Beadwork was never something that I thought I would actually take up. It was more of just like the curiosity of learning something new, because I had never really touched on it. And I'm self-taught, so like I was just looking at like YouTube videos and like different things online to learn. And I really, really hated it when I first started. I thought it was like the most tedious thing, really difficult, but now I bead every day and I really love it. And I never thought that like it would be as successful as it is. And for me, it's like become super therapeutic, and it's, I can't imagine my life without it at this point. And like the colors, for me, color is very healing, and a lot of the time I find that I do art because, I don't know, I think I'm just like, trying to work through like whatever's going on in my life. So it is like healing to create things. And I think using bright color just like makes me feel happy when I'm making whatever it is I'm making. So yeah.
I read in one of your bios that your beadwork is also inspired by your mother and grandmother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how so?
Well, my grandma, my maternal grandmother, Lizzie, she used to do quill work. So she was insane. Like she passed away when I was 4. So that was something that was never passed on to me. But I have some of her pieces and I cherish them. My mom just has like a huge collection of jewelry. Like every time she goes somewhere, I don't know, she just buys jewelry. So her beadwork collection's pretty awesome, from like being on the powwow trail when she was younger, like before she had me. So yeah, looking through old family photographs, I see a lot of my grandma and my mom wearing like fringe style beaded earrings, and yeah, it's inspiring to see. And my mom still has some of those pairs, so it's cool to be able to like see it in real life and then see it in this photo that was taken like 35 years ago.
Yeah. And do you have any specific colors that make you think of specific things?
It's funny because, like, I don't know, I started doing these projects of beading on family photographs, and the one I did of my grandma Lizzie, like, just the way that the color tones are in that photo, I decided to use gold as the background because I just thought it, like, looked good together. And then when I finished that piece, I was talking to my mom, and she was like, she hates the color gold, but she was like, why did you choose that color? And I was like, I don't know, it looked good. And she was like, oh, well, that was your grandma's favorite color, gold. So, and I was like, that's nuts that I didn't know that prior to doing that. And so yeah, I feel like sometimes I maybe like gravitate towards colors that they loved, like purples and golds and turquoises and stuff.
And do you think that your grandmother communicated that gold vibe to you in that moment?
Yeah, totally. I do.
Yeah, because I think that that's like, whether it's beadwork or baking, or if we're doing the things that our ancestors did, whether they died when we were 4 and we never really got to connect with them on that, like, person to person level, but it is like absolutely a connection that forms.
Yeah, I was like, how is that? Like, that can't just be coincidence, I don't think. But I don't know. Yeah, I like to think that she was like channeling me to choose that color.
Is that where I read in another one of your bios that the colors you use are rooted in ancestral knowledge? Is that where that comes from? That communication between you and your grandmother?
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. I love that. So we talk a lot about like the micro and the macro, and I think you as an artist are like an embodiment of that, from like the tiny detailed patience of beadwork and working with the tiniest like beads. There aren't many smaller media than beads, but you also do large scale murals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what's the same about beadwork and murals, and what's different, and how do you take up so much space with your artistic praxis?
I guess the similarities are like, I just feel the need to create, and so like whether like no matter what medium that might be through, I just happen to really like beading and painting. But yeah, it's true, like beading is so, they're these tiny little objects that you use and then you build something pretty big out of it, and I really like that idea that like, and it's nice to hold too. Like it's a textural thing as well for me, I think. For painting, yeah, because when I'm beading, I'm like, just like, so within myself, like I'm not really moving much, like I'm sitting still at a desk. And then when I'm doing a mural, I'm using my whole body, and like, depending on the size of it, some of them have been 40 feet long. So like, taking up all that physical space feels really good to get energy out. So yeah, sometimes before I bead, I'll like draw something really quick if I feel like anxious or something. But yeah, I don't know. It's really special to be able to like be invited to paint in public and show my work and have people be so receptive to it, because that's like just, I couldn't ask for more, honestly, when it comes to like my livelihood and just living,
Yeah. And can you tell us about some of your murals, specifically like where people can see them?
Yeah. In Canada, there's a few in Montreal. So there's some at, there's one in St. Henry around the corner from the Metro. I think it's St. Jacques and St. Philippe corner. There's one in the high school there across the street in the history classroom, if any students are listening. And then there's one in Ottawa under the pedestrian tunnel by the Portage Bridge. I'm not too familiar with like Ottawa intersections, so that's as much as I could say about that. Yeah, and then Concordia is housing a few in their school. I'm going to be doing one in Toronto soon, and one's going to be up in Winnipeg soon for Wall to Wall. So,
yes, we're recording this, and then it's going to go online in a few weeks. So listeners, if you're listening to this now, I think you Cedar, not you, our listeners, you Cedar, your Toronto project will be in full swing or just about finishing up.
Yeah. So hopefully when this airs, I guess people will be able to go and see it. The one in Toronto will be along Lakeshore and Coxwell.
Lakeshore and Coxwell, got that, Toronto? So murals, can we talk about like philosophically how important murals are in terms of like taking up or claiming public space?
Yeah. I think it's really important. I feel like I've been really fortunate in how they've kind of come to me. Like the first one I did was with a group of like 4 other Indigenous students from Concordia, and we went to Peru and like painted at an elementary school there, and that was kind of like my first taste of it. And it was like really great because we got to work with the youth that were there and connect with like the community, which is really important when you're traveling, I think. And then just like the history of murals or street art, I guess, is more male dominated, or like white cis het males. So to be able to maybe showcase alongside that kind of demographics, like really important, I think, because there aren't that many, I guess, female identifying street artists or people of color really being represented. Like, every time I come across a mural and I know it's an Indigenous artist, I get so excited because I just feel like, I don't know, it just feels like home in that sense. Like we're being visible in the public eye and we're still existing and like we're not dead.
Yeah. And here and taking up space and with beauty and art. Mm-hmm. Because you too, again, like, you know, your jewelry, your beadwork comes from like your grandmother, your mother. You also work with digital. I mean, one of my favorite portraits ever in the history of portraiture is the one that you did of yourself with like some digital color wizardry around your face. I'll definitely, with your permission, I'll put it on social media so our listeners know exactly the one I'm talking about. So it just seems to me that it's just like you said, like, as long as you're making art, there's no limit to what you'll use or what the product will be, the end result. Do you ever want to put limitations on yourself? Do you ever think maybe I should concentrate on this, or is that just like a horror of an idea?
No, I never want to box myself in because I feel like creativity comes in like all forms, and you shouldn't have to be, as an artist, you shouldn't have to be limited to only being able to work in one medium or be able to do like one thing well, you know, like, I don't know. I've been really fortunate in that, like, growing up, it was always supported. Like my parents are really supportive of me being an artist and being creative. And then like being in high school and then university, like I was able to kind of dabble in everything. So there's not much I haven't tried. So I know what my strengths are and what my weaknesses are, but like photo was always like my number one passion. Like since I was a kid, like I've always had a camera. And now like, and I never had like a computer growing up. Like I didn't have access to social media and stuff like that as a teenager. So I was always like doing collage or like hands-on things. Yeah, it's kind of weird now that when I'm doing those digital portraits, because I'm not physically able to touch the photo and use markers. Like it's just like my one Apple pen or whatever and drawing on a screen. like it's fun, but it's also like, it's just a different feeling to it. Yeah, so I do prefer more analog things. Like if I had the option, I always print out my photos. I only shoot film. Like, yeah.
Oh, wow. You only shoot film.
Yeah. Like I have a digital camera, but I don't think I've ever printed anything out of it. Like film is, my number one. I don't really see the point in taking photos if it's not with film.
That's so interesting. So do you work in a dark room ever, or?
Not anymore. Like in high school, I had that experience. And then I was going to build my own dark room, but then I just didn't because there wasn't really space in all the places I was living. But like I have a projector, like for the negatives and stuff. And like I just send my rolls of film to different places to get developed. So and then I have a Polaroid camera still. So I've been using that a lot. And then those new Instax cameras.
I don't know what that is.
It's
What's
like
that?
a Polaroid, but like a smaller version, like a credit card size.
What?
Photo. Yeah, but it's instant. So yeah. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, because I grew up with the Polaroids that weighed about 8 pounds, and you had to have like a special purse if you wanted to carry it around. So that'd be so fun. So, I mean, because you've experimented with so many media, can you tell me about your process of failure? Like I always say, like, you have to be willing to not succeed if you want to be constantly experimenting. That's sort of the nature of experimentation, is you have to be willing for it to not work out the way you thought it was. So can you tell me about like experimentation and failure?
Yeah, don't be scared of it. But yeah, I don't know. I've like, after graduating from university, it was like so long before I was able to like live off of my art fully. It's probably only been like maybe 3 years at the most. And I graduated like almost a decade ago. So like it's not just like an overnight thing, obviously. Like I think if you're really passionate about something and you're a creative person, then you'll continue to do those things no matter like what maybe outside people say. Because I had a lot of like not such great professors in my undergrad that I felt like really didn't support me as a person and let alone my art. Like, so, and then I had some really great teachers that were like extremely important to me. And like, I don't know, I think you really just try to focus on like the positive people that are giving you good feedback and wanting to like share your vision, like listen to that over people that are like being negative about whatever it is you're making. Okay.
What if the person being negative about what you're making is you?
I try to like, I don't know. I do have those days. It's not like every day I'm like, yeah, I'm going to make something awesome. Like,
I'm the world's greatest artist.
I've been like, oh my God, like I should be making stuff, but I watched a bunch of movies and like didn't really do that. But like, because I'm a full-time artist and I'm my own boss, like I've learned that it's okay when I'm not in a creative mood. Like I'm allowed to take a day off and watch movies and not feel guilty about it. And when the creativity is there to run with it and like make as many things as physically possible in a day. But it's a struggle because I feel like obviously people are their own worst critics or judges of characters. So I do have like a lot of guilt when I'm not creating things or when I'm doing something and it doesn't work out the way I imagined. And then I get like mad and like, I guess I'm not going to make that anymore, but I really hate giving up on things. So I usually just push through it and try to figure it out as frustrating as it is.
What do you think about the concept of muses? Like artistic inspiration comes from, your grandmother aside, comes from some greater source that we don't understand. What do you think about that idea?
I really like that idea because I think there's so much in this world that we don't know or understand, and that there's like, I believe that there's like different realms or different planes of existence existing at one time. So like just from my own personal experiences, like I do believe in a higher power. I don't know what that is, but I think that like we have ancestors and spirits around us guiding us all the time, and we just have to like listen, like be quiet and listen to it. Yeah, because like, yeah, sometimes I'll dream about different color schemes or like patterns and stuff like that, and then I'll make it, and then I don't know, I'm like, oh, I guess maybe that was like a message from an ancestor like telling me to do that, or I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a lot of philosophy about what's going on when we dream, a lot of science too. Nobody has really cracked it yet, so I think us witches are just able to, decide for ourselves. But that it's kind of in line with the Buffy St. Marie sort of quote unquote, that her spirituality is creativity. Does that resonate with you too?
Yeah, I think so. I can't imagine doing anything else with my life, to be honest. Like, if I'm not creating art, like, I don't know. I'm sure I'm good at other things, but I don't want to find out because I like art too much.
I'm keeping that. I'm sure I'm good at other things, but I don't want to find out. I like what I'm doing right now. So can you tell me a little bit about Unseated Voices and what that is and your involvement?
Yeah, it's, I guess not annually anymore, but just a mural convergence that happens in Montreal usually, with mostly female identifying street artists, queer, POC, from Canada. The year that I was painting, there was 2 from the States, from California, and then the rest of us were from around Canada, so mostly Ontario and Quebec. So we like came together for a week. I think it was 8 or 9 days in August 3 years ago.
We've all lost track of time. All of us.
In St. Henry neighborhood in Montreal. So some of them were partnered up. Some of us painted solo. And we each got our own space to do whatever we wanted, and it was really cool. And Camille, she was the organizer, like the curator for it. It was just like, I don't know, she's awesome. All the artists were really awesome. I felt like I've never felt so supported by like a group of people that I've never met. Like there wasn't like competition or like a hierarchy, which sometimes I feel when I'm invited to certain mural festivals, or when I'm meeting certain mural artists, even like, it was just like, it just felt like such a strong sense of community, and I don't know, it was really special. I was like really happy to be a part of that.
And you mentioned earlier that you do some like youth outreach work. Can you describe that a little bit?
So in the last 2 years, I've been working alongside the organization. It's called InPath, but their branch is either Mukjam or Nuijanan. And it's an organization that helps facilitate artists into communities, and usually I've been placed in northern Quebec. Some of them are in like rural BC or northern Ontario. So a lot of it is, it's like, I think 60 artists are on the roster. So just artists from all over Canada, all different backgrounds, all different disciplines that get to go into the communities for either 4 or 6 weeks at a time, working on there's like a guiding question. So your projects are kind of based around that. You just get to work with awesome Indigenous youth in these communities, and it's a lot of fun. It's, I don't know, it's really special. Youth are really funny. I really enjoy working with them. And so I've been fortunate enough to go up there I was in Waskaganish and Mysticiny, and then last year I was in Waminji, doing beadwork projects with them. yeah, so it was pretty cool.
Can you share with us one of the guiding questions or an example of one of the guiding questions that you used in these exercises?
Yeah, mine was, if you could speak to your ancestors, what would you say? So
Hold on. Say it again.
if you could speak to your ancestors, what would you say?
Ask yourselves this, listeners. Wow. Ask yourself this. Wow. And do you have an answer? I mean, I imagine all of the children that you worked with had very, very, very different answers.
Yeah. It was mostly like I just really wanted them to be working with family photographs and doing like mixed media with them. And ancestors like doesn't necessarily have to be blood related, or like we also frame the question as like people within your community, whether that's your blood relation or not, like and just what kind of conversation would you have with them? What do you think maybe your relationship would be with them if they're alive or passed away? Like, I don't know. I just feel like personally for me, I never really got to meet my grandparents. And so I think about that a lot and like what my relationship would be with them if they were still alive, or how would I maybe be different if I had their guidance as a young kid growing up. So it's cool and it's really beautiful because I love photos. So like it's really nice to see the kids bring in old family photographs, and then we have a year-end show, and like one of those shows, it was really beautiful. I guess all of them actually that we've done, like when the people in the community come out, their family members are like, I haven't seen this photo in so long, or like I miss that person, like, oh my gosh, so it's like really nice, I think, for them as well to see maybe a family member being honored in that way, like not forgotten.
So you are doing with them the same work that you do, where you take a photograph and you actually are painting or beading or changing it in some way and then presenting it in like a gallery kind of setting.
Yeah.
That makes me think of one of the things that I read about you somewhere, I can't remember, that said that you were inspired by shape-shifting. So obviously we can think of shape-shifting as taking a photograph and making like a piece of quote-unquote fine art with it. But what does shape-shifting mean to you?
It's interesting. I never really thought of it in the way that you just described it. Shape-shifting to me is more of just like, just like from stories that I've heard growing up, like, I don't know, just being wary of shapeshifters and people. Like, for me personally, I think people are capable of wearing so many different masks depending on who they're around and what their situation is. So, like, I always joke, like, trust no one, I'm like, I trust people, but I'm also like really wary about people, and like, I don't know. I just feel like I've encountered too many people that are one way with me, and then I hear crazy stories and I'm like, oh my God, that person's actually really terrible. Like, I don't know. So yeah. And then when I think about, like, this sounds maybe kind of silly, but like actors, like actors and actresses, I think that they're like the perfect embodiment of shape shifters, because that's what they do for a job. Like, they turn into different characters for their movies. So like, they walk among us, like we just have to, like, I don't know, trust our instincts, I guess, when meeting new people. And I don't know. And then also, like the levels of existence too that I believe in too. So I'm like, oh, like, where's that? What? I don't know. What is that person's spirit? Like.
Yeah, because there's like a supernatural idea of a shapeshifter, where a person actually, like, I don't know, a werewolf is probably like the most common example, like someone who actually, but you're talking about it in terms of just like how we go about our lives.
Yeah, I think about that a lot.
And so there, sometimes shapeshifters are trying to deceive you.
Mm-hmm.
Being one thing in one place and another thing in another place.
Yeah. Or just like, also just like not really knowing maybe what people are capable of, like, depending on their situation. So like, I don't know. Yeah. Just maybe trusting someone completely and then them being not that safe person anymore because they did something really terrible. Like, I don't know. I think that that's kind of like shape-shifting in a way too, because you're just like, how can someone be so like loving to someone and yet be so abusive in whatever way that means, you know?
Are you a shapeshifter?
I think we all are capable of it. Yeah, for sure. Like, I'm a pretty like introverted person, so I think also shape-shifting in that way, depending on who I'm around. Like, sometimes I'll just be really quiet, but if I'm around people that I know, then I'm like more loud and outgoing, I guess.
I think that's true for a lot of us.
So I guess I shape-shift in that sense, if that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense to me.
But yeah, like the mythological side of it too, of just like these creature beings that live in our legends and folklore. Just like, yeah, there's shape-shifting stories in different indigenous cultures as well. So just being aware, I guess, of like, I don't know, like I feel like those stories are always used as like cautionary tales. I don't know if tales is the right word, but you know what I mean? Like, yeah, stories to warn you about certain things, or being aware of like the land that you're on or the like environment that you're in, being respectful of being on the land. And
honoring treaties. We won't get into Nova Scotia, but we will say honoring treaties.
Yeah.
And that brings me to like, obviously, like, you don't speak for all Indigenous people or even all Anishinaabe people, but for you and your praxis, what is like the number one message that if you could get it across to our listeners and whoever else they're speaking to, what's the overarching message from your perspective, from your praxis?
In regards to just like daily life?
Whatever you think is important. I'm leaving it to you to decide, like, what is it important for
so
you?
much pressure.
I know. It is a lot of pressure. Like, oh my goodness, I have 1 second to figure out what kind of wisdom I want to impart.
I don't know. I think like being respectful of like, I think respect is a huge thing. So like being respectful towards people, the land, like just in your day-to-day life, and being, I guess, like humble as well. Like, I don't know, I feel like every day I try to just like take a moment to be thankful for like things. Even if I'm having a shitty day, I'm like, usually things look up in the end. And I know that's like not the case for like everyone, but just having like, I don't know, yeah, respect for yourself too, like not dealing with shitty people when they have bad energy that like that's draining, you know, like I don't know. I think being in quarantine or like seclusion and not being able to hang out with friends as often or at all has been like really eye-opening in terms of like who I choose to spend my time with and where I want to put that energy. And yeah, like if I'm not excited about going somewhere or doing something, like why would I force myself to do that? Like listen to your body in that respect. Yeah, and just, yeah, I don't know, just being nice to people, treat people the way you want to be treated.
Seems so obvious to me. How come?
It can be so hard for me and for other people, and it's like, I don't know. Yeah.
Especially when people are shape-shifting and you don't know who you're dealing with from one moment to the next.
Exactly.
So from you and your art, as we wrap this up, I want to take, and from this conversation, the micro and the macro, and giving reverence to tiny things and big things, and listening to our dreams and finding colors in our dreams and then bringing them into our real, quote unquote, real, non-dream state lives. That is a major inspiration that I've taken from you today on this day.
Oh, awesome.
And again, can you repeat, and then we'll sign off, the question, the guiding question that you gave to your students and then that you have passed on to our listeners, and then we'll say goodbye for today.
It's, if you could speak to your ancestors, what would you say?
Thank you so much, Cedar Eve Peters. I can't wait to hopefully come across some of your murals when I'm allowed to leave my house again. And the latest one, again, is in Toronto on Lakeshore.
Yeah, Lakeshore and Coxwell. It should be up, I guess, by second week of October.
Perfect.
I guess you could, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So drop your socials and where people can buy your art or your jewelry, because it is also art. So I probably didn't need to add that, but
it's all direct buying. So either on Facebook through Cedar Eve Creations or on Instagram at Cedar Eve. So CEDAREVE.
And we'll be putting that in the show notes, and of course you'll see it on Instagram, and you can just click through, and you take DMs for purchases. Amazing.
Yep. So mostly people will just directly message me and I'll let them know if it's available. I try to keep my posts updated as to what's sold or not. So if anything is usually over like a month old, it's not there. I can guarantee that.
So once again, listeners, if you see something you like, snap it up, because it's not going to be there forever, and neither are any of us. So why wait?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you again so much, Cedar Eve. It's been a joy.
Thank you, Amy. It's nice meeting you.
You must be a witch.
Don't forget to go to foxglovefarm.com and use offer code MissingWitches.